You're listening to Brand to Brand.
What's up, everyone? We are listening to the second bonus episode of Brand to Brand. Today, we have the absolute privilege of hearing from the Stacy of Stacy's Pita Chips, someone that I think for any budding entrepreneur you want to hear from anyone that's involved in consumer products or direct-to-consumer, anybody that's trying to navigate the world of how to build a new brand. Stacy sold Stacy's Pita Chips back in 2006 when the company was approaching $65 million in annual revenue. They sold to PepsiCo under their FritoLay division. In today's interview, you're going to hear from her on her latest venture, B-Bowl Bars. V, are you eating a bar over there?
No, this is not product placement at all. I'm just so hungry. And they are so good.
Is this an unboxing right now?
This is an unboxing audio of it. This is an ASMR of Veronica.
Do you have Stacy's Pita Chips over there too? Or are you going to mix the two together?
I could mix. Oh my God. Stacy, we have a new idea for you. No, honestly, these are
some cross-branding opportunities.
These are effing amazing. They're so good.
Obviously, so excited to hit play in a second on this interview, but my conversation with Stacy, we talk about founding story, how she got started. I think the funny thing is that, and a lot of people are familiar with this story about the pita chips, but these pita chips were like an afterthought. They weren't the main event. And sometimes the best ideas are hiding in plain sight. And sometimes when you launch something, your go-to market, what you actually start with is not the product that people want, and you have to be ready and responsive to kind of learn from that. And so I think she shares some really awesome and really cool tidbits for the budding entrepreneurs of what she went through, the challenges and the struggles that she dealt with. And now she's got a new brand. She's already sold. She's exited. She's done her first venture, and now she's off trying and tackling new problems, the world of fitness bars.
She's a badass.
She's a badass, a female entrepreneur, touting female entrepreneurship, and a story that I think brings some joy to all of us, and a story that I think we're all in some ways cursorily aware of because we've all walked past a bag of Stacy's Pita Chips that have her name and in some cases have her story on the back.
Or we've all eaten an entire bag of them in one sitting.
Well, that might just be you.
I'm really excited for this episode. I cannot wait to hear what Stacy has to say.
She has a hell of a story, and when we think about female entrepreneurship, managing your business to an exit, and then thinking about what's next in that next chapter of your life, I think there's something for everybody here. And with that, let's kick it to Stacy Madison. All right, we're ready to roll. Stacy, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Stacy, I think your story is absolutely humbling, and I think one of the things that's so special about it is there's so many people, so many entrepreneurs that are sitting on the sidelines that have business ventures, ideas, etc., and sometimes the best ideas are hiding in plain sight. Your story as an entrepreneur, both with your past venture, Stacy's Pita Chips, which in some ways kind of makes you a household name to some of our listeners, now B-Bowl Bars. Could you just share a little bit about your background to start?
Sure. That's a very big window.
I know.
But the Pita Chip Company was started on a food cart in downtown Boston. And most people already know this story, but the nutshell version is really we wanted to open up a restaurant or some kind of a food establishment or a takeout place in downtown Boston. Didn't have the money or the capital to do it, so we ended up buying a food cart and making healthy roll-up sandwiches in pita bread. And you can run out of anything on the food cart, Sprouts or whatever, but you cannot run out of bread or you're closed. So we always kind of had this excess inventory, over-purchased the bread so that, on a really busy, we could handle any kind of day. But at the end of the day, we had all this bread, so we cut it up and we baked it into pita chips. And then the next day we got a new order of bread because to do a roll-up sandwich, you have to have the elasticity like in the bread, It has to be fresh. Can't crumble. So yeah, we made these pita chips, gave them away for free to people standing in line, and then started bagging them And then over the winter, it's not so nice in New England to be outside on a food cart. So that's when I started, doing the packaging and selling some in advance and trade shows and things like that to get the product launched.
It's such an interesting story because you sort of set out to create this kind of food truck venture, and then the outcome of that was that you realized that the pita chips were really just such a missed opportunity in the marketplace. And in your case, it was, your kind of commitment to not wasting resources that sort of created this.
And, you've twice now used the word humble. And it is, my business partner, Mark, he had, a doctorate in psychology. He went to a lot of school, and I had a master's in social work and my license to private practice. And so with all of these degrees now, we bought a hot dog cart and refurbished it into a healthy roll-up cart. And talk about humble. Two things you mentioned, humble and pivot, being able to pivot. And pivot is a very entrepreneurial word that everybody's using right now, especially with COVID. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to pivot. So
that's right. And you were completely self-funded with this venture, to my knowledge. Is that right?
Yeah. And I get a lot of finance questions, and financing today is very different than it was years ago, where, banks gave loans and money probably a little bit easier to come by. However, we started it by running up credit cards and all of our savings and borrowing money from our parents. And I know that there are people out there that have done what's called the credit card shuffle. So you run it up and you keep track and, free, no interest or whatever, 90 days. And then switch to another credit card and then close that one and switch. And you do that, you do the credit card shuffle. And we really started, that's how we started. And we didn't know where we were going either. It wasn't like, we had this laid out plan. We just were smart enough and able to figure things out enough that we could, when an opportunity came by, we could snag it.
Yeah, and when you speak about, maybe not necessarily having a plan, I think not, a lot of entrepreneurs don't necessarily have the plan. What did scaling your business feel like? What were some of those growing pains that you had to sort of overcome outside of just simply like capital?
There's so many. The whole 9-year window is just growing pains. Luckily we had somebody's factory we could borrow that another food cart person that we met, and then she would bake pretzels overnight at Boston Pretzel Bakery, and we would bake pita chips during the day and use her oven. Just kind of businesses helping businesses, helping each other and networking. The growing pains, initially were how are we going to make them? And then once we figure out how we're going to make them, then we were, all right, well, now that we are in a position where we need to buy a bagger or something, we need to buy a piece of equipment. Are we going to install it in her place, or are we going to get our own place? So you have to make these decisions. And that's why I get so upset when people are like, oh, you got lucky. Because it's those small decisions, those little decisions that you make each and every day that get you to where you are. And there were growing pains all over the place. We had all kinds of problems. We're a psychologist and a social worker doing manufacturing, and, machines breaking, pita chips flying everywhere. It's every day.
I think it's so easy for people that weren't necessarily at a seat at the table to say that you had a lot of luck, but you're right. It is the sum of all parts. And as entrepreneurs, sometimes you end up burning the midnight oil. You'll do whatever it takes to fulfill the order or make it to that next stage in the business. And obviously, yes, we all need some level of luck, but there is so much more that goes into it. What about, so much of building a business is like a people problem. How did you kind of grow your team, or just figure out what type of key personnel that you needed while it was sort of that dogfight when you were sort of early in the business venture? What did that look like?
Well, initially, my brother, who's also a psychologist, he came on board and just applied his cognitive skills, right, into a lot of the operations. So it's kind of like, well, how are we going to make this on a larger scale? And that's why he's a big reason with the bar company that we're launching right now is, I was doing it on a small scale in my juice bar, and same thing with like the pita chips. And then my brother now has come on board, and he's like, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it a little differently and figure out how to go from small company to larger company. And back in the day of the pita chip company, we didn't really have the internet so much, which is a wealth of knowledge. But that's kind of a parallel to what we're doing now. It's still the same skills. You have to be able to get yourself out there and to find out the answers to the questions that you don't know. And researching ovens for the pita chip company or researching mixers for bars, or it's kind of the same thing. You have to go out and find out and talk to people and talk to manufacturers and go tour places and go to trade shows. And everybody's like, but what do you do? And I'm like, you just get out there and do it.
You have to confront these problems head on. I think one thing that I was so curious with us chatting today to kind of learn a little bit more about was sort of the deal where you ended up kind of selling Stacy's pita chips to FritoLays. And I know you weren't planning on that when you started the venture.
Yeah, like we went to a lot of trade shows, and at the trade shows we were approached a few times and we said no. And then they said, somebody had told us once that when you do 50 million in sales, that's when you kind of get the attention of some of the larger companies. So I think we were at about 63 million a year in sales, which is people don't always grasp that number, like selling that many chips. The sheer volume of moving that many chips and loading docks and truckloads and it's a lot. But we were approached, we said no, and then they called back again a few months later, and then a second company within like 3 months, a second global food leader also approached us, and that's when we were like, well, maybe we should consider selling. And we put together a team, and we interviewed different firms, got the team together, and then they put it kind of up for sale. So, and you do that basically, even though you have potential buyers, because who knows, if there's 2 people that are interested, maybe there's 10. We wanted to find the best fit, and I really think we did. I mean, we sold to Frito, which is led by Pepsi, and they wanted us to spearhead their health and wellness kind of platform, and I think we fit the bill.
That's a great story. And I think, a lot of businesses, you start with a similar story that you have no intention to sell the business. It's just not even in the back of your mind. But there are times and situations where your goals kind of evolve and change and your life changes. And now you've, kind of had an opportunity to start your next venture that's still and that's sort of in this health food space. Could you tell us a little bit more about B-Bowl bars, which you're eating right now? Which flavor are you eating? Are you having the
almond butter?
Almond butter.
Almond butter with chocolate chips.
I got the peanut butter, which might be my favorite. Although I did a survey, and to be honest, this one seems to be the winner here with the almond butter. So.
Yeah, they are really amazing, and they are a product that I launched when I started the juice bar in Needham. I had a juice bar. We still make them the same way, where we basically mix, press, and pack it. And it's nut butters, different nut butters. Obviously, I'm eating the almond butter, you're eating peanut butter. Chocolate chips, oats. We like to say we sweeten it with bees and trees. So there's wildflower, honey, and dark maple. We have 18 grams of whole grains. We're gluten-free, dairy-free, and the protein that's in here comes from eating real food like almond butter. And we have nuts. We're coming out with one with Brazil nuts. We have one coming with macadamia nuts and with cashews. So you asked me my favorite flavor. Right this moment, I'd say the almond butter.
It's a special bar. I think most of the time when you're eating something like this, you're sort of planning to bring a water or some sort of beverage with you because you can't finish the bar and make it through it without something. But these are just so delicious and extraordinarily flavorful. So much more so than I think I was even expecting, even from kind of hearing about them. So, next question: you've had an opportunity to build more than one brand, as a serial entrepreneur, talk to me about what brand means to you. And then I want to talk a little bit about packaging and, all the ways that you've been able to sort of create the brand. But obviously this show's brand to brand. We talk a lot about branding. Would love to first just kind of understand what you think the role of the brand is in your business.
I'll tell you, at the tail end of the pita chip company, when we were at the point of selling and in the middle of it all, we had a fire. That really tells you the strength of your brand, right? Because here we are, we're mid-acquisition, and really they could have backed out of the deal. It could have been, but the reality is that they're buying the brand. They're buying Stacy's. They're buying, that people love them and they believe them and they attach what Stacy's stands for. It ties into the marketing, and a lot of smaller companies that are building up their marketing, and I remember back in the day when I was starting, I interviewed the guy who founded Smart Food, one of them, and he told me, think of your marketing and your sampling, and I wanted to sample. Think of that as a fire hose, and you don't put a fire out by going like this, all back and forth. You put a fire out by you go like this, and you aim it directly at the bottom of the fire, and that's what you do. And you have to think of your marketing strategy and your brand and building your brand in the exact same way. And I want to say that it does work to do the throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. So I'm not saying don't get out there and try, but always think through. Like, it may be attractive at that moment, but you have to think through further. Like if somebody calls up, can we have some samples? We're doing a parade, and the questions you have to ask is, does the parade go in front of a market that sells our chips? And then you have to go one step further and say, okay, the same thing with the bars. Even during COVID, right? We donated 30,000 bars down to the hospitals down in Florida and stuff. But we were in Publix. It was our only store. And how are we going to get people during COVID to go buy them at Publix or whatever? We literally took them out of every single box and put available at Publix on every bar. And then we donated them. Because how are we going to get the message to the people who are just opening it up? Otherwise, it's just trash. You just open it up and you're throwing it away.
I love it. And I think that sometimes people just, they donate, they put their wares out into the world, but they don't necessarily think about how they can actually make it so that customers know then how and where to buy. This is probably a great time to ask, for those that are listening, where can they get these tasty Be Bold bars?
Well, we're trying to list every place on our website. So if you go to BeBoldBars.com, you can certainly find the stores there. Obviously, they're in Publix. We're in some of the Wegmans. We're sold in the refrigerated section because obviously it's nut butters and we don't put anything in them, so they are in the refrigerator. But they're still good for a couple weeks outside of the refrigerator if you take them hiking or whatever. So
we talk about branding. We talked a little bit about sort of the importance of your brand and your marketing. Could we talk a little bit about packaging? Obviously, like I've got a cinnamon sugar Stacy's pita chips. I've got the Simply Naked. I've got your Be Bold bars here. There's some commonalities and some dark packaging. What kind of evolutionary journey you went through as you sort of uncovered sort of how to present the brand and how that brand is manifested in the packaging that you chose?
We just, during COVID, we took the time and redid the packaging again. So in our new package, we wanted to take advantage of the equity that I have in my name. So the carton has, on the shelf, the carton has a photo on the front. It says from the founder of Stacys Pita Chip Company. We have, we invested in the carton itself. We put like a barrier halfway across so that our bars stand up straight. So we're actually trying to patent that, but
it's great that you're utilizing the brand equity that you already developed in your previous venture and you're bringing that forward. And I do think that as people are considering which bars to buy and where to spend their money, that will mean something.
And we're doing this whole campaign, #What'sYourBold. because we're also trying to build positivity into the brand. We all agree that right now what this world needs is more positivity, more recognition of, people being bold, women stepping up and getting back into the business world, things like that. So, whether it's small or large, we have this hashtag What's Your Bold campaign, and we're trying to really, recognize when people just do a little something nice each day.
You started talking a little bit about some new flavors. When are these coming to market?
And so they're rolling out a little at a time. When we start selling it to the buyer, and the buyer, by the time they get it on the shelf and some are in the fall and some are in the beginning of next year. And on the internet.
Speaking of the internet, I know you guys have done some work with influencer marketing, obviously understanding that people that are prime candidates and ideal customers are into fitness and otherwise. What has your experience been with influencer marketing?
It's been great. We try to work with influencers who either they've come to us and found the bars and are just like, oh my God, these are so good. And maybe they did something and then we start working with them. Or if we've sent samples and they just get totally hooked. It doesn't benefit anyone unless, you're a believer. And you have to be a true believer. So, that's kind of our experience has just been. And, and it's also how... So there's a difference. I guess there's a little bit of a difference to me between influencers and like a celebrity who might have given you a plug. So for example, Jimmy Fallon was like, "Oh my God, I love these," and it's like that's great, but it's only as good as how you use it. You got to bring that back home. And, when somebody signs on to your website or something, or when somebody makes a purchase or something, we love these, or, you know what I mean? Somehow figure out a way to use it.
That's true. I think from a PR perspective, sometimes these big things can happen for a brand, and sometimes people don't necessarily do a great job of actually capturing it. The work associated with creating an event or some sort of launch thing occurs, and then we're all happy with the success that occurred there, and then we don't take the moment to capture all of the different pieces and make them work for us in our outward approach. Would love to hear you. We were talking a little before about women getting back into business coming out of COVID and otherwise. I feel like we'd be amiss to not just talk a little bit about female entrepreneurship. Do you want to just share a little bit about your views and your thoughts there?
Sure. When shit was going down over the last 4 years, I got to say I was almost dysfunctionally upset about some of the things going on in the country and feeling like we're moving backwards rather than forwards. And for me, also being bold, it has a lot of meanings, but one of them is really stepping up. And people are like, well, you already had a financial change in your life. Why are you doing this again? Why, and I do feel that I did and do have an obligation as a female entrepreneur that somewhat knows what they're doing to get out there. And you know what? It's one more business. And it's, it may not be changed on a global scale, but it does make a difference. When we built the pita chip company and we had 300 people working there, and it's not just us in our factory, but it's every truck that's backing up to the loading dock, every store that's out there that's selling the chips. It has this tremendous effect on everything. And so that's why, I really think that it really helped me to get back into it when I felt really these last 4 years angry and upset. And I'm like, well, how am I going to channel that into doing something?
Well, for a long time we've talked about corporate social responsibility, but I think we're seeing kind of 2.0 of that now, where major brands are taking stances on big social issues. And I think the role of business in the world has changed. And now you are seeing major organizations, major companies take stances on things like Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't see that role. I didn't see businesses taking those stances a decade ago. So
I know people are afraid, and people are like, oh, I don't want to, they're afraid that, this one's not going to eat your product or something. And I don't know. You just got to get past that. And at the same time, go back to kindergarten and conflict resolution when two of you are fighting over the same toy, and think, well, how am I going to move forward? So I think more companies that kind of step up and do the right thing, and they are just in the long run going to, it pays off. It does pay off.
100%. People are looking for brands that are authentic. They want to see authenticity. Having a photo of you on the front of your bar, it creates more of a relationship. I think all of those things we're starting to see more and more so as the bleed between our personal lives and our work lives become closer and closer together. Well, listen, I know we're running up to the edge of our time. I have one last question for you. It's a question I ask everybody that comes on the show. And that is, what few pieces of advice do you have for people that are sitting on the sidelines with business ideas?
It's kind of like when you're a kid and you're learning to dive, right? And you go and you scooch up to the edge of the pool, and it's so damn scary. And I kind of think of the analogy as making the decision. Making the decision to take that first step is the hardest part, because once you do it, then it's just a matter of execution and doing it over and over again. And I'll never forget, I went on a ski camp thing, and I was on a slope that was way harder than I had ever been on. And the instructor was like, you just got to put your edge of the skis right over on that mountain. And she's like, you can't just do it slow. You have the skills, you have the skill set, just scooch a little further and then just go for it. And I went and I did, and I scooched. I was so scared, and I went for it. Oh my God, I went, and I completely skis, like yard sale everywhere. And I crashed. But you know what? I got up and I did it again. And that's kind of the same thing as when you're starting a business. So you just got to make the decision in your head that I am going to do this and I am going to try it. Once that decision is made, you're there.
And you might fall, and you're going to learn from every fall, every mistake that you make. You're going to get right back up and you're going to do it again. And the nice thing is, in this world now with this sort of gig economy and otherwise, people can start a business on the side. They can start it as a small part of their day. They can give it a chance. They can throw up a website or a landing page, see if people want to buy, if there's some interest, Kickstarter, whatever. There's just never been a better time, I think, to start a business. And so with that, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join me today and for joining us on the show Brand to Brand. And for those that are interested in learning a little bit more about Be Bold Bars, check out the website, check out your Instagram.
@ Stacey Madison.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say before we close?
Yes, I got to say, be bold, BOLD. Be yourself outside of your comfort zone, little by little. Do it again.
That's beautiful. Keep pushing yourself to reach greater heights. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for joining us, all right?
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to Brand to Brand. If you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button, leave us a review, and don't keep us a secret. Tell your friends.